We're live.
Hey.
Hey everyone, welcome to Inside.net, where we talk about all the cool things that are happening within inside of the .NET ecosystem. My name is Cecil Phillip, and I'm joined by my host Rodney Littles II. How you doing, Rodney?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good, feeling good. Good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in like a long time, dude. Like
We had a lull over the summer because summer things. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, but you know what? I feel like everyone needs a break sometimes. Like sometimes we need a timeout, right? And to kind of, recalibrate and reset a little bit. So, but we're back. We're here. We're ready to go.
Yeah.
So today, friend of the show, right? A friend of ours, Mateus is here, and Mateus is going to be talking to us about how we can do continuous delivery with Nuke. And if I'm not mistaken, Nuke is actually Mateus's project. He is the what's that word? The benevolence dictator for life. Nuke, right? And so we definitely it's super interested in hearing like all he has to say and talk about. But Mateus, why don't we just start off really quickly with you telling us a little bit about yourself, like who you are and what do you do?
Oh yeah, hi from my side as well. My name is Matthias. I'm a software developer based in Germany, in Leipzig. If you ever heard about that little town, it's actually famous because the composer Bach, or in English I think you say Bach, has just his burial just a couple of 100 meters from my home in a church. So the city is popular for theater, cultural stuff and all that. And I've been a software developer for a major part of my life. Meanwhile, I'm also getting old, so now I can probably say it's a major part of my life. And became interested in C#, of course. I absolutely love it. Just thinking back then in my university, we were mainly focused on Java and JVM, but for some reason I asked them, can I hand in my exercises in .NET with C#? And they agreed. And I think that was the path that was laid out by them for me to continue in .NET, actually.
Yeah. Nice.
So I got a question to that because this came up with, and this has nothing to do with the show, but we like to go on tangents.
Yeah.
Someone asked me the other day, they're like, so you've done .NET your whole career? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you didn't have to learn other programming languages? I'm like, I did, but I'm still a .NET developer. I know JavaScript. I could do Python. I could write a little bit of Go if I turn my head sideways and shake the keyboard. You know what I mean? I could do those things. But like I consider myself a .NET developer, right? Like those are the things that have, put food on the table. Those are the applications I put into production, so on and so forth, right? And so I'd love to hear from you. Like being in .NET is one thing. Like starting out in .NET is one thing. What is the thing that keeps you here?
Ooh.
Yeah, good question. I actually also have an answer.
To start off the show.
So I didn't mention, but I'm also working at JetBrains. So that's my day job for almost 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I've always been interested in tooling in general. At my last job, I was constantly looking at the tooling side and kind of lost track of the business value that we should deliver. So I was kind of the guy for looking at frameworks that we could use or improving our infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I mean like code infrastructure, not what you put on servers and all that. How to improve that. And I think also what I usually always say also to my colleagues is .NET convinces me for the reason that it has such an amazing choice of tooling. Yeah, I'm looking at other ecosystems. I think you don't have that. So particularly the good competition between Microsoft and JetBrains. Yeah, and one time this product takes a little bit from the other product. The next time it's the other way around, and we kind of both try to improve on that. And I think the people that win from that situation are the developers in .NET. And I think, the ecosystem, it's not perfect by any means, but it sets a pretty good standard, pretty high standard. occasionally, from time to time, I'm also checking in Go and what other ecosystems, But usually, it's always, there will always be this situation like, oh, I know this from .NET, and do they have something similar, like an alternative for their ecosystem? And many times it's like maybe I'm also missing the time, to actually invest more and to learn. Yes, there is a proper alternative, but I had plenty of situations where I thought, okay, in .NET this looks pretty good already.
Yeah.
And I think that keeps me. And I would lie if I would not also say, if you start in another ecosystem, that's exciting and all, but I also like to have that broad knowledge that I already have for .NET. Yeah. I do, however, I remember that my previous boss was recommending me a book called 7 Languages in 7 Weeks, I think it was. And I still think it's very valuable to look at other languages and how they do things. And I also know for a fact that language designers and their teams, they talk a lot with each other. Yeah, not to mention any particular name, but may it be in Java or Kotlin or C#, they talk with each other and debate things. I think one name clearly comes to mind, which is Anders Heidsberg. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But yeah, that is the part that keeps me in .NET.
I think you touched on a lot of really good points. Choice for me has always been one of the top ones, because I think the only reason that I would have to leave or change, other than the job, would be like, can I not do the thing I want to do here? Right? Like, sure, I can build web apps, I can build mobile apps, I can build desktop apps, I can build things in the terminal, I could technically write scripts if I wanted to in .NET, right? Like, so if I couldn't do the things I wanted to do, then sure, that makes sense. And I'm all for like the best tool for the job, right? And so sometimes we play with other things or whatever, but in most part, I've always felt like I've had the option to do whatever it is that I've wanted to do. And then on top of that, I think over time, like you build up these relationships which are important to you. You know what I mean? Like, me and Rodney have a really good relationship. Me and some other folks in the community have a really good relationship, right? And I think a little bit of, well, man, I got to go over there and start over. Like, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I already have people here that I respect and I can collaborate with. Again, not that there's anything wrong with going to other places, because I fully support perspective, right? I think perspective is important. But also too, just think about like the equity that you built up in a community, and I think that's something definitely important to pay attention to. Anyway, that's not what we came here to talk about. Let's talk about Nuke. So, tell us about.
I just wanted to say that's funny how you said it, because if I had these situations a couple of times already. If I know someone very well from the .NET space and they say they move somewhere else, like React front-end and all that stuff, I'm always a little bit, heartbroken.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. But with
Okay.
that being said, I think a part of being in the community, right, is giving back to the community, right? And one of the ways that you give back is through not just your project, but your open source projects, right? So you have an open source project called Nuke. I'd love to know a little bit of the origin story, because every superhero has a good origin story, right? Like, and I always want to know how it started. So what was the thing that got you to say, hey, this is a needed tool and you're the person that's going to build
it? So even at my previous job, I was kind of into build automation. Yeah, I even have on my NuGet account, I still have one NuGet package that was working with MS build files, so plenty of XML to kind of do a build. But at the time, I somehow lost a bit track of it because I somehow got interested in another project, which was about testing and so on and so forth. So I had my open source project back then already, but in another field. And at some point, I wanted to have proper build implementation, and I looked at a couple of alternatives. Didn't really like any of these, at least for my personal preferences. And I thought like, okay, yeah, but could this maybe look like this and like that? And I was discussing a lot with my friend back from my previous company, and a lot of discussions, and also making some, writing some code, of course. And I think after 3 weeks or so, I was still discussing with him about certain ideas that I had. And he was like, "Are you seriously, do you seriously want to continue with that?" Because he said, that looks like such a huge load of work that is necessary to at least give the basic tools to developers into their hand. And yeah, meanwhile, it's how long ago? 2017, I think I started. So something like 6-7 years, roughly like this. And yeah, the motivation was basically I didn't want to mess around with scripting approaches. Yeah. I wanted to have proper tooling integration with the IDE. That was also a big lesson that I learned from my previous project, because there I made some mistakes that led to the fact that it doesn't properly integrate with existing tooling. And that's very important. I think, at least for me, that was a big mistake back then. Not sure if I could have done anything different, but yeah, I learned that lesson at least. And well, yeah, Nuke, it works as a simple C# console project where other people use scripting approaches with, may it be PowerShell or whatever you like, or YAML, of course, any kind of schema that your CI/CD service dictates, let's say, Azure Pipelines, YAML, GitHub workflows, etc. Those files you still need, but you can put the majority of the implementation of the logic into a simple C# project. And the major benefit, I think, is you can execute that locally. You can debug it. You can refactor it. You can upgrade packages just like with a regular C# project. Yeah. And that was always the vision that I had. Later on that road, I found new opportunities also because of that, because you're already integrated with existing tooling. That makes some new, let's say, ideas much simpler to implement. And yeah, that's Nuke. I also have my slides here next to me. I haven't checked if which of the ones I want to show, but if you want, we can skim through a bit, or you just throw me some other questions.
We'll get to that, because I kind of want to talk about Nuke and like his origin story and kind of like how Matthias and I came to know each other. I'm a build automation nut. I'm very much the type of person where it's like set it, forget it, and don't look at it until we need to. So it was interesting when I was looking at build automation in the C# space. This had to be sometime around the DNX DNU days, right? So we're talking, this is how far back like I go with Matthias. So I was looking at there was like Bullseye, Cake were the two emerging things that were coming out of it, and I invested heavily in Cake. I still think Cake is an amazing technology, but to Matthias's point, I wanted the same things he wanted. I'm a developer first and an ops person like when I have time. So if you give me an ops solution and expect me to maintain it, it's harder for me. But what Nuke provided me was, it truly just felt like C#, so much so that when I want to extend the library, I can just implement his interfaces and extend his interfaces any way I see fit. And all of my stuff just works in Nuke. So Nuke became, for me, a playground as a developer where I could customize my build automation how I wanted to. And that was a very big thing at the time in the .NET space. Nobody was looking at it from that perspective. Everybody was looking at build automation from you write a bash script, you write a PowerShell script, and off it goes, right? Or even the Cake approach, which is still more of a C# scripting, right? There was also they were actually trying to use straight C# scripting to do some of the stuff in other tooling. and it just never felt good enough for me because I'm a developer first. So
I have to make one clarification, but you make the point very good. I would like to invite you to all my other talks actually. So it's not just it's not just me as the maintainer talking about it. But one clarification that was kind of funny actually, because I also came from the cake scripting approach. But later then I found they also have a different flavor, let's say, which also uses this console project as a basis.
They do.
But I didn't know about it at the time. It was just coincident, for some reason. But unfortunately, I hope that's fair to say, it lost a bit of the DSL look and feel through that C# projects in within Cake. Yeah. So that's just as a clarification from my side.
So yeah, let's dig in. Let's talk about what is Nuke, how do we use it, why we would use it, as opposed to just going and building a whole bunch of MS build directives into our project, right? Like, why should I use this thing? Oh, I guess I need
what do you want to see? That's the question. Do you want to see a proper live demo, or I have very good slides actually from the talks that I usually give.
Let's do this. Why don't you give me a couple of slides and then let's dig into some actual meat, because I feel like people won't appreciate the nuances you talk about, the IDE aspects, without seeing it themselves.
Yeah, let's like 30-70 it, right? Like, let's do a little bit of slides and like the major part of it, like 70%. Let's focus on like the code.
All right, we're adding your screen now.
Sounds good. So some slides I will just skip through a bit to don't waste any time on the boring parts. But there's a tool that you should install that helps you with the setup. And just to quickly go through the setup. So if you're in a repository, you don't have build automation just yet, then you can type Nuke setup. Right after, you're going to be asked, do you want to set up a build? And then you can make some choices here about where should the build project be located, how should it be named, which version do you want to use, all that stuff. Also, if you want to have a default solution, that usually means that to that solution, the project is automatically added, the build project. So once this is done, setup completed, and when you then go into your structure, I have it here in Rider. You can see this is the repository that I have. There's a Git folder, etc. And then a couple of things will be created. So .nuke is usually just a marker to know where's the root of your project. That's very helpful to generate all kinds of paths. So maybe we will look at that as well. But also you have these 3 bootstrapping scripts that is relevant for SDK bootstrapping. So if you use YAML files, GitHub Actions, for instance, then you will know that their images, when a new preview version is out of .NET, they don't immediately have that ready. So the new preview versions. But with that, since you have the bootstrapping, you can just upgrade the version in your global JSON file. So that's the place where the SDK you want to use is defined. And that basically makes sure that the build, at least the build project, can compile on whatever target machine you're going to execute it. May it be Windows or macOS or Linux. Yeah.
So quick question about that, because you kind of showed something, you kind of glossed over something a little bit, that another thing people always ask me about. Do you have a preferred folder structure for how you organize your project? And I'm asking that too, because if I'm incorporating Nuke into an existing project, like, does it need to look a certain way, or is it really just as long as I find a solution file, like, we'll figure it out?
Yeah, you can also choose from the solution. I think here you don't see it, but if there are multiple solutions,
but if there was one in there, it'll pick it up.
You can choose another one. You also don't have to add it. Also about the location, that is basically a question that you would answer here. In which directory should it be put in? How should it be named? Like the build project name, or customizable. My preferred way is to have it this way: to have a build folder where just a single project is located, And this is dictated pretty much. The .nuke folder, that is something that, that's necessary to kind of mark the root directory. Usually it's just the same as .git, but not every project is under version control, so it makes sense to have a separate marker for that, I think.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Another reason I asked too is because lately I've been using that convention of having a root folder and then a source folder and then additional artifacts, right? So I'll have that source folder, I have a test folder, I might have a docs folder, maybe something that has a bunch of images or markdown stuff in it or whatever the case is. But at least then visually we see that. But I think sometimes that's important to talk about because I think as .NET developers, particularly as Visual Studio developers, file new project does not look like that, right? Like it looks different, right? And so now you have to do a little bit of work, not a lot of work, but just a little bit of work for it to like have that type of structure, right? Where, you can have things separated out.
You know what, Cecil? We should do a show on .NET templates because that is how I've solved that problem. I no longer do file new from Visual Studio. My mobile projects, my web projects all have .NET templates that create my entire folder structure for me just from the command line .NET new, and I'm good to go. So it alleviates all of the excess stuff. It is a command line thing, so if you're not comfortable there, but I will say this: JetBrains Writer takes care of it for me. So if I have a install template, like I can actually file new using my template.
Yeah, it'll just like pick it up, right?
And it works just fine. I don't know how it works in Visual Studio. Just being honest.
Got it. Yeah, let's do it. I'm down.
Yeah. Anyway,
sorry. Yeah, I actually have a similar folder structure usually about what you mentioned, Cecil, about the docs, etc. So yes, okay, I'm not separating between source and tests, but I was planning to actually. Yeah. So yeah, I also think that's a good idea. Okay, but jumping back here to my slides. So what's then the key feature, I think, on the foundation for everything else is, with a build project, you actually get a project added to the solution if you choose to. Yeah. From here, what I also have is linking all the relevant files. So that is also symptomatic, I think, for build automation. There are a lot of files scattered around. May it be in GitHub, the GitHub workflows, the Azure pipeline YAML file, etc. Or you might have the global JSON file, the bootstrapping scripts, etc. Logs also. So these files, which you see here with this little indicator, those are all linked automatically. So that is like a single point where you can, manage your build automation, and you can reach those files just from within that project. But then central to the idea is there's a build.cs file. Yeah, so you can just write simple C# there. Let me see on my slides what the next part is. Yeah, so like here, it dictates a couple of things. Let me go to another one maybe. So we have a static int main because it's a console project, and then it just delegates to Nuke as a framework to actually execute that build. We have the base type also here, but usually that class would be named program and it wouldn't have a base type. That's what usually people see about console applications. This here is just a little bit different up until here. Yeah, so base type and predefined static int main. And then we have a target, and a target is basically just a property in this case, with a function that defines what should be executed. And within that body here, within that anonymous function, basically, lambda, you can write anything you want. It can be console readline, it can be invoking other command line tools, it can be anything. Yeah. And good example, maybe also going forward, you have code completion. Don't want to talk about this too much, but this is basically Serilog, which is integrated. Very nice. And you don't have to go to your local CI/CD provider, let's say, and check how am I writing log statements or anything, in which format. You just use Serilog in this case, and it will also properly colorize that output depending on where you're executing it. Yeah, so that's also a big plus. Code completion, I think I mentioned already. What else? debugging works. Yeah, we can attach and then execute and halt just right there, and inspect what kind of what the state of our build is actually. Oh, I have a weird image effect here.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Gee. Okay, and what else? And that's a nice thing. No matter what IDE you're using, since it's C#, it's rather easy to add additional features. Yeah, like in this case, in Rider, for instance, we could create an extension that would add a symbol next to a target, and from here, then with the Alt-Enter menu, you can decide to execute that target or debug it, or run debug without dependencies. So dependencies we haven't touched yet. I'm not sure where that actually is. Let me skim through here a bit. That's not it. Oh yeah, but also here refactorings, for instance. Yeah, we can say we want to rename compile, for instance, and that is, let's go one step back, compile here, compile there, and we can rename to hello, and it would properly update in both places. That's also something that you don't have with YAML. You may be able to extract, some actions or steps or variables in Azure pipelines. That's all possible, but it's not using the tools that IDEs already provide. Yeah. JetBrains Rider is a good example because, for instance, if hello world, for instance, just the string was used in several places across a single class, yeah, and you would say, I want to extract that as a field, then it would replace that with a new field for all those occurrences. Yeah, that's what I expect from an IDE, and that makes the progression on build automation so much easier, because you're not running into a situation where you forget to update maybe here, maybe there, a value that is duplicated basically. And yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, what I really like about the syntax of it, right? And I think about other task runners that I've used in the past. Because I am a .NET developer, this is extremely readable, right? Like I could look at it and I don't have to think about it too hard. I'm like, oh, okay. I might not know what a target is, but I can figure it out, right? I'm like, okay, it's going to run a thing, right? And then there I have like that main build execution pipeline. But in terms of like being able to use my existing knowledge that I have, like I think that's important, right? And I don't have to, like you said, I don't have to write YAML because you know how much we all love YAML. We don't have to write some of these other things, right? Like we can just be in that familiar space, and I could run, debug, refactor, and like have all of that stuff that I'm familiar with just in here. And another thing that I realized too, like for folks that are not DevOpsy folks, and I had like this light bulb go off like 2 or 3 years ago. All of these build tools are just task runners. They're really just running functions, right? And I think that's important to point out, because now, kind of like what you were saying, right? If you think about it, as a .NET developer, I can use HTTP client and I can make a web call. I could connect to SQL. Not to say that you should, but like if you wanted to, you could do things inside of your tasks, and probably things that you already know how to do in C#, right? So now your time to productivity is so much less, because again, you already have the mindset, you already have the tooling, Rider, Visual Studio, VS Code, whatever the case is. Now it's just a matter of like, how do I architect these functions, right, to do the thing that I want to do, and like, what's the order I want to have them run in?
To your point about readability, though, Cecil, like that's the thing, right? Like this is just in the IDE. It's just C#. So just like any other C# class, you can hover over target, and if you don't know what target is, there's IntelliSense and there's information, there's documentation right there that pops up right there in your IDE and tells you what a target is. Execute, it tells you what execute is. Like you can F12 to it and decompile the source and go read it right from your IDE. Like that's the draw. Right? It's C#, like it's just C#. It's literally just C#.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I also think I just have to translate that. Maybe you might also feel a bit captive when you're just in the YAML world, let's say, like a prisoner. Because if you're just working there, you might never think about what could I do You would never say, okay, yeah, let's okay, maybe you would write a separate see the eye tool, but that means additional work, maintenance, etc. But the how to say, the threshold to actually decide, yeah, we should do that, it will look nice, is much higher than if you're already in C#. And I'm doing all kinds of stuff in my build automation. There's really no limit, like for the CI/CD pipeline for Nuke itself. What kind of stuff am I doing? Like posting to all the relevant social media channels, for instance, to let people know about a new release is happening. What else? Uploading to GitHub Actions, to GitHub releases. Just the other day, that was also quite funny. I have 2 workflows that run on separate agents, and they will update to a single release. Now that release does not exist before, but since I can write conditional logic, I can say, okay, whoever is first, create that release. If there's a release already, then attach your assets. But those 2 are, they can work in whatever order they're gonna be executed. If you write that logic in YAML, I'm not sure you would have any fun. I don't think so.
I couldn't even imagine how you would even debug that in YAML. Like, what would that look like?
Right.
About 30 commits minimum. Yeah. No, this didn't work. Still doesn't work. Yeah. Oh my God, what am I doing? I don't understand how YAML works.
Maybe this time. Oh, one more time. Nope, this is the one. We're just gonna keep doing it.
Still nothing. There you go.
Let me bring this up. This is the not my piece of work, I have to say. Yeah, so credit goes. I forgot. I didn't note who gets the credit, but okay. I think I think it pictures the whole situation pretty well. Or I have another one, master of YAML, like this.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So question for you then, because like I mentioned before, like a lot of these task runners and similar with Nuke, it's really just running functions, right? Like a very specific task that I wanted to do. Have you seen from any of your customers or users or contributors?
Customers.
Well, I mean,
open source. Remember
your community.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
That's the better word. Community is better than customers. Community is better than customers. I apologize.
It's okay.
No, all good.
Have you seen? I'm still working. That's what's have you seen from your community of folks any really interesting use cases that you're like, oh, I didn't think they were going to do that with my tool, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know what? It feels like what my slides are a bit.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about this, but one of the features which is great with Nuke is if you call nuke -- plan, because if you have a large graph of targets that cooperate with each other, and we call this usually dependencies, and there can be all kinds of dependencies, like one target can be dependent on another, so it requires it to be executed before, but it can also mean only if the 2 are run in conjunction, then these should have a certain order, or one target triggers another one. But anyway, going back to the point, there's this feature of nuke -- plan, and that will show you like how the build graph looks like. And when I hover here in this GIF, then you will see what's highlighted means if I trigger, for instance, clean, only clean gets executed. If I trigger compile, these 2 will get executed. Only if I trigger publish, everything will be executed. Yeah, so that's a nice feature. Coming back to your question, that was surprising. So someone must have generated a large part of targets, and it ended up. What were they writing? I have no idea, but a couple of 100 targets. Yeah, that was.
Wow. They are releasing the entire world, Matthias. That's what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely funny to see. That was the first thing that came to my mind, but I'm not sure if I answered your question now. So your question was about things that I didn't expect people would do in their pipelines, right?
Well, just with Nuke in general, like whether it's extensions that they've added or even
I
just
can answer that. I can actually answer that because so another friend of mine, Cecil David Driscoll, we write a lot of code together and we like a lot of the same things. So we found Nuke and immediately started to extend it because it's composable, right? I can compose different small interfaces and create a orchestration of my own design, right? So it's funny because Matthias found the work that we were doing. He's like, why are you guys doing this way? Why are you like, well, these are the extension points that you give us. So a couple of weeks later, he comes back to us and says, oh, okay, try this update and see if the API surface isn't cleaner. We had extended Nuke in a way he never thought that anyone would do. And when he figured out what we were doing, he wrote extensions into the library specifically for us to tie into.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes, he has found those things.
Yeah, that is. I also just remember David was creating an issue that is sometimes also, let's say, a burden that, or for the lack of a better word, probably, but you two are using something very special. And sometimes because through the missing feedback also from community, because as an open source developer you have no idea how your product is used. Yeah. Right. But I just remember, like, for instance, one change that I did, it must have only popped up for David. Yeah. And if the number of people who are affected by this is so small, then sometimes you also have to make a let's say unpopular decision, at least for that particular person. Yeah, that's a bit from the tales of an open source developer, because you have no idea how anything is used. Then you discuss things, you might have a pull request already, but no one is looking at it. And then people are surprised and say, oh, please revert this. Well, once you already made the release and a couple of people also already upgraded. Yeah, and that's a huge issue in open source, I think. Yeah, not the biggest, but for sure, but one of them. Yeah.
So you've showed us a couple of these features, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and spoil the whole bit, right? So Cecil doesn't like YAML, right? He doesn't like to write these YAML files. Does Nuke provide us anything that would help, the YAML challenged get our build from a local machine to a given CI instance?
Yeah. One thing though, before I forget it, we often talk about it just in a sense of CI/CD, but reality is you can do any kind of build automation. So it can also be local tooling for whatever you can think of. Yeah, it's really build automation is the central point, but CI/CD is of course a big part of that. So yeah, but jumping over to CI/CD. So what I want to show briefly is this is somehow how it looks. Once you push you have several targets, you push to GitHub. I think that's GitHub Actions, if I'm not mistaken.
It looks like it, yeah.
And you can see there's nice formatting. You have colors that indicate where something went wrong or well. You have those collapsible regions here where you can open a target and see its output. You can see what kind of command line tools are being invoked, like in this case, for instance. That's also clearly separated from the output of said command line tools. So I put I put emphasis here on the execution, because you always want, okay, what commands have been executed? The output of that is something different. Also important, but less important. Yeah, but you really want to see the invocations that you have. And coming back to this YAML thing, now I mentioned that initially already. This is not a replacement to have YAML files on your CI/CD product, whatever you use. Yeah, right. But it makes the amount of code that you have to write in those files much less, by an order of magnitude. Yeah. And well, there's still the possibility to, since those files are so small, the YAML files, it kind of makes sense to generate them. Yeah. So in this case, for instance, we're kind of blending out all the rest of the build class here with all its targets. But you can see GitHub Actions, for instance, just going to be put as an attribute on that class. We can pass the name, how the workflow should be named, on which image it should be, it should run, which target should execute, and when it should happen. There are plenty of more parameters that you can set. Like you can also, for instance, define what secrets should be imported. Well, you still have to go to your repository and set the secrets, although even that could be automated.
Feature request.
I have an issue set up. It's marked as first timers. So go ahead, please.
I'm not a first timer though, but I'll look it up.
Yeah. Good point. All right, but from that definition, and this works with a couple of providers already, GitHub Actions, TeamCity, etc. You can generate the YAML. Yeah,
I'm sold. That's it. You don't have to say nothing. I'm sold. I love it.
Stream over. Mic drop. Walk off.
That I am sold. So obviously the only thing that would be necessary is, well, obviously you'd need .NET on the build machine, right? But like
not even. That's part of the build strap. Yeah, that's part of the build bootstrapping scripts.
Yep.
So you don't.
It will generate that task that will set that up and install.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes, Cecil. I know. Like I know. I knew as soon as I told you about this, you were going to be sold. Like,
wow.
What this particular
I didn't know you could do this.
This particular feature is what, like, and I remember when he told me that he was doing it, I was like, yes. He's like, Rodney, you don't like YAML, right? I was like, no. He's like, would you like it if I generated it for you? I was like, shut up and take my money. Like, how much do you want me to pay so that I don't have to write the YAML?
Take my money.
I still have to write some YAML, right? I don't have to write no YAML, but I don't have to write the amount of YAML I used to write. And that's the key.
I love this. This is amazing. And then also the fact too that, like you said, you support some of these different providers. I think that's even more amazing.
Yeah.
I have to ask you, can I invite you to all my talks and to the front row?
Look, sign me up. I'll be there. I will stand up. Give me a t-shirt. I'll parade it around. Because like this has changed my perception of build automation, right? Because it was always, okay, I personally like a local build script that my developers can use to build the application the same way that the CI server does it, right? And now what Nuke provides me is not only do I have that build that I can run from my command line as a local developer, now it also generates the YAML that my CI system needs in order to execute. So it's just reducing the amount of overall headache that I have to do. Basically, all I have to do is set up a build script in Nuke, and that's it. Again, I have to write a little bit of extra YAML sometimes. Azure Pipelines YAML is different than GitHub Actions YAML. So those are some nuances, but by and large, Nuke generates the YAML for my build script and I don't worry about it.
This is super cool. This is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
I'm not done about the generation.
There's more? Is there like a one more thing moment? Is that what's happening?
It's coming.
Well, I can introduce a bit also with the sad part probably, because I have plenty of ideas around Nuke, but I'm lacking co-maintainers. Yeah, for one reason or another. So I've always been, I think Rodney can confirm, I'm always trying to give my best to, get people up and running with working on it, but it hasn't worked out. Not in a bad way. I don't mean it like that, but there was no one else, let's say, who would have loved to put the same amount of work and energy into this as I did. And I have a lot of ideas still, and I still think this generation part needs a lot of work to kind of redo that also and re-implement, because I'm not a fan of these attributes anymore. But I still want to show you a couple of ideas that I already implemented with that. So for instance, often pipelines, they're supposed to upload artifacts. Yeah. The way if you generate the YAML to upload artifacts is as simple as that. So for instance, you have a pack target that creates a package. All you do is have this fluent call to the target to say, okay, this produces in the package directory some NuGet package files. Yeah, Nupcake. I don't know. People pronounce that differently, or I always say NuGet package because it's so weird to say Nupcake, to be honest. But anyway, that is, which one is that? That also looks like GitHub Actions, but it would look the same on any of the other providers that will automatically upload your packages. Yeah, no work, no additional work whatsoever. Another feature, that is the one that I'm the most proud of, probably. There's a feature, and I have to make a bit of explanation here. This here is a call to .NET tests. Yeah, so that means .NET as a CLI is invoked with .NET tests. Let me see if I can. Let me maybe make this a little bit smaller and bring this up here so I can show you what it would actually execute. So let's say there's .NET test, and I have a phone number here. That's not good. But it's not mine. I have no idea to whom it belongs, to be honest.
Well, now everybody can see it, so
okay.
It's just a test number. There you go.
Give me a moment. That's not good. You also know where I'm based. Yeah, it's true. But 1 second, I can remove it. But now it's too late anyway, so I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Anyway, .NET test, for instance. So that call, I will write this down as what gets actually executed. Yeah. So then we have the configuration, for instance. That can be anything that you pass, because configuration is a parameter. What else? We also have and I might
test result directory.
Yeah, test result directory, something like that. It would translate to just results directory like that. That's a directory. And then combine with all the test projects. And test projects is an enumerable. And then we set that as a project file and also pass the logger. So that will basically generate a couple of calls like this. CSproj, for instance. This. And if those are 3 projects, let's say, then it would look something like this. By the way, the phone number is something public anyway, so, but please don't call it anyway.
It's international for me, so I won't.
Yeah. Okay. So, and those calls would get generated. Yeah. You have a couple of test projects basically that get executed from that. And now, since we are in a CI/CD pipeline, what if, and we could make this up until, let's say, until 10 or something, yeah, in between all the others. And those test projects, they have tons of unit tests. Unit testing or unit tests is a good opportunity to parallelize things, to execute in parallel. Yeah. What can you do in Nuke? 3 changes. Partition into 5, let's say. You say this test target should be put onto 5 concurrent agents. We have to do a little bit of work with regards to the test projects, because on each of those agents we need to find the relevant test projects for that agent. But otherwise, those just get executed on the respective agents. Yeah. So first agents takes the first 5th part of that, second 5th part, etc. And that's a nice demonstration here. That's an artificial solution with 17,000 tests. You can see at first this number indicates the number of agents that have been used. Yeah. It takes 30 minutes. Then I raised it to 10, and it was suddenly at 5 minutes. Yeah. So that's how easy it can be to parallelize your tests. Yeah. And you can see it's still the amount of tests that pass. So I really just increased that number. And even you see that was a cold start here. That's a hot start. So it went down to 3 minutes. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that many tests in that period of time, obviously depending on like the content of the test, but like that's pretty good.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So that was when I say artificial solution. So what I tried to mimic there is there are a couple of unit tests which run in a reasonable short time, like milliseconds, and I call them integration tests, a couple of seconds maybe, and system tests that might take up to 30 seconds or something like that. Yeah, or 15 seconds, something, but you get the point. Yeah, they're different. They're different in the way how fast they can run, and that will actually, and that was also a nice thing to kind of research, because once you know about the execution times of your projects, you can try to optimize that. Yeah, you can apply greedy algorithms to say, okay, first I want to execute or distribute all the projects that take a long time to execute or to test. And then I stack all the shorter running tests on top of that. That would, on average, that would decrease the time of execution even more. Stuff like that you can do. Yeah.
That's actually pretty impressive. I haven't seen that feature, so like I'm excited because I've got a project right now that runs somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000 unit tests every build, and it takes a good amount of time. So being able to parallelize that it in the way that you're talking is fantastic.
Yeah. So question for you then, and I feel like Rodney knows the answer to this already, but I'm going to ask it for the sake of the folks that are watching. So what would happen if I'm building different types of apps? So uploading a web app and uploading a mobile app is not the same type of uploading. So how would it work as I'm going through like these different application types and I'm trying to, I don't know, I'm trying to deploy to the Android market, or I need to publish to, what's that thing iOS uses, test flight or whatever? Like if I need to send it to other places, right? Like how does Nuke help me in like that space?
No problem at all. So it depends a bit if there is support already. So let me see. There's
so this is where I'm going to put in a shameless plug. I currently have an open pull request against Nuke to get my things to Test Flight and to App Center and to all of those various places. So Nuke already does it. Like it's just a .NET project. It builds it. It creates a binary. How it gets there is, again, to his point, is whether or not it's supported. But it works. Yeah. I have it working right now for mobile apps. No problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
There is like this Fluent API is supported for a number of tools already. And I think it's very powerful because you have, for each parameter that you pass, you have a single line of code. Yeah, it's not like a blob of what you usually have in YAML, a long string of this is the execution. I should make my hands like this because that's too long.
Yeah.
You don't have that, but you have a single line for each parameter, and that also makes diffing on changes much easier. Like you add a parameter, you would clearly see that in the diff when you look at the changes. Even like .NET task is a good example. When you look at the .NET pack command, so that would execute, where is it? This here, .NET pack. So that is the invocation basically. Then you have a list of parameters or arguments, and you can see through what property you can kind of manipulate that. Yeah. So that is the way how you do invocations. I think this is also a good motivating example. msbuild /nr true /m7. Like, who has an idea what that means, actually? Anyone?
I can tell you.
Yeah. So with Nuke, that gets a little more obvious. I'm stupid for not using the same example. But in Nuke, you would actually write here then like set node reuse true, and you have documentation once you hover that method, like we saw before. And the second is, I think it's max CPU count. Yeah, the M stands for max CPU count.
Yeah.
And that you would see in your code. So it's not a situation like someone looks at this invocation and is asking, okay, what does it mean? Why is it there? Yeah. Should it be 10? Should it be, I don't know what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not false?
Somebody pick up the documentation and tell me, what does /nr do? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny you brought up this example, because as you were in the previous slide, I was thinking, I remember when I actually tried to write an MS Build task and how much my head hurt trying to do it. Because one, there's the, okay, well, let me see what tasks are available. I don't know if you've ever tried to like skim through that documentation, but like you'll end up in a lot of different places with like a lot of different opinions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and then what if I want to write a custom task and I'm writing C# to write a custom task to put in my MS Build thing and I'm just like, I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? And so the fact that I could just write C# for me is like, you already had me sold at that, but like adding the YAML stuff and then now the test parallelization, I'm like, I'm sold. Like that's it.
I have 3 more things.
Let's keep going.
But again, this is work in progress stuff. Like I said, I would really appreciate if there was someone helping with that, because it's a huge amount of work working on Nuke to keep everything up and running. But I will show you some stuff that is work in progress. Yeah. So let's look. Let me try. I wanna increase with every step. So I think this one is nice. So that would work with a background Azure function that can send you live updates of your build that is running. So you can see this is the Nuke repository building on a couple of different CI agents. Now I'm just changing the theme because why not? Because I wanted to check if it still looks okay. Shows you the duration, indicates whether it's running or failing. You can actually also attach additional messages and make it a thread. You can also see which target is currently running. And you could even make ETAs for that. Yeah, that's also possible. It's a work in progress. I haven't looked at that in a long time. Yeah, something that I'm looking at more recently, which is also interesting, is a live diagram. Like here in this case, you can see this is my definition, and down here I have a live diagram that would update as I make changes here. I forgot in what state that is in particular, but you add a dependency and it would update that graph. It will highlight, you can navigate and all that kind of stuff. Also quite interesting because that whole thing here is just that is C# communicating with a React app inside Rider, through Chrome Embedded Framework. Also very fancy and very interesting.
Yeah.
And the last thing that is also something very, very close to a finished product, but it's difficult because I cannot really offer that for free, because it involves some stuff. How to describe that? Like it requires an API token for my Cloudflare instance, and I mean there's some strings attached which would make it only relevant, let's say, for someone that is actually paying for it. But
so you are going to have customers. Haha.
Maybe at some point. I'm working hard, but okay. But to explain this image here, this is Rider. Yeah, this is GitHub Actions. You can see I have the immediate window here, and I type log information hello from Rider. That message pops up on GitHub Actions. So what that means is this debugger, you can see it up here, is attached to the GitHub Actions agent that is currently running. So you can
like at the same time?
So
at the same time.
So instead of making a commit and pushing it and praying, he's telling you can debug it locally and push it to actions.
Stop playing around.
Sir, this is close to being finished.
That is finished, yeah, except for the, I need a web service that kind of communicates with the API tokens, because you need that, because the way how you would connect is something like, let me pull this up here again. In Rider, you can do remote debugging through SSH. And then your address would be something like this, for instance, and you can always connect there. Then it would make a challenge response basically with your SSH key. That makes sure that only you access that server, because you don't want to allow that to anyone else. And what it also does, and you don't see it in that picture, but Rider has this, I can also show it briefly maybe here. Rider has this feature of attached folders. Do I have any attached folder here? I don't know. And because I don't have one, but just imagine, it would, once you connect, it would automatically create an attached folder, and then you can browse just like that on the GitHub Actions image through that file system. So it will map the local directory through different tools that allow you to, map a directory, a remote SSH directory to a local directory, and then it would attach that, and you can browse through. That works.
Pause. We didn't stop for a second. Hold on. So I understand what you're saying. So the process is running in GitHub Actions. You're connecting to it remotely over SSH from Rider or the terminal or a thing, your IDE, right?
Yeah.
And so are you saying that you're pausing the execution in GitHub Actions?
Exactly.
That's crazy. That's crazy talk.
Matt, you tell me what you need from me to get that feature complete, and like if you need monies, like you can take some of my monies, because like you don't understand the number of days I have spent, like actual calendar days, like hours worth of days that I have spent pushing bad commits to GitHub to try and get my CI system working. If you're going to sit here and tell me that I can use your tool to debug stuff like that locally, I personally would pay money for that. No question.
That's crazy talk. I don't believe you. That's crazy.
Like, I don't even believe it's possible. So like you just showed me something that I never even thought of. Like, because I've always asked, like, what would it take to do something like this? And now you're showing me, oh yeah, Rodney, I got it figured out.
That is amazing. Yeah,
that was a super interesting feature to research. It took, I don't know, just to make SSH work, I think it took like a week at least of spare time, afternoon or nighttime basically. Then I put it aside for some time, pulled it back out of my closet and worked on it again, and then I took another week because I made a super stupid mistake to get it running again. And I think that's also again the nice part. What's happening, and that is something that you can add through an extension. If I connect through, can I show you that actually? Let me see. Let me close this down up again. But here, remote, I don't know where this actually is. Attach remote process. Yeah.
Yep.
So this is the place, or this is the address that you connect to. Then you choose the process. Of course, you need to pick the build process. And once I say attach, what will happen, because that can be implemented in the extension, is it will attach this folder to have the directory mapping. So I just said it the last, or just to continue, attach the debugger and also create a new terminal session. So you have everything that you have in your local development, terminal, folder view, and debugger attached. And you can just move around and inspect things and see content of files and stuff. Like I had that before this was ready, and there was one file, one git config entry that I would have never thought was relevant. If I had this feature already at the time, I would just, okay, casually browsing through the directory, seeing, yeah, this file is there. I didn't know this existed. And I would have seen that's the reason. Yeah, that's the reason why it didn't work before. But yeah.
Man, look, shut up and take my money.
I wish.
Yeah, this is amazing, Matthias. Yeah. This is like legitimately like no one's thinking about this. No one's solving this problem. Not one person I know is like, hey, how do we make the actions, the Azure pipelines experience more integrated with the development cycle? No one's trying to solve that. Like this is groundbreaking exactly. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Man.
I mean, I wouldn't call it myself groundbreaking, although I do like researching in those topics. That's a lot of fun. But finishing it to make them, generally available, GA, is another whole new dimension. This is like the, how's it called, Pareto principle. Okay, 80% still works, although it's already a lot of work. But those 20% that you need to make it a proper, product or usable by everyone, that takes a lot of time, because that for sure needs a web interface, some accounts and all that, some way to generate an API token, because I cannot just randomly allow everyone to just to show that again, to create and a DNS record for yourname.nuke.build. Yeah, I just cannot do that.
Right.
It's not possible.
Right.
I don't know what else to say. I'm just gonna.
I do because you brought up a question earlier, Cecil. I know we're over time, and I honestly don't care today.
Nah, keep going.
This is fantastic. So, one of the things that I found for Nuke, or found Nuke for, is probably the better way to say that. I do a lot of random pushing of NuGets and building of applications, and all of my APIs get built the same way. They run through the same steps. All of my mobile applications get built the same way. They run through the same steps. And what I was actually trying to solve when I found Nuke was basically creating a single build that I could just pick up and use in every single one of my applications. So that's actually one of the things that drew me to Nuke, and one of the things that has kept me here is that it allows me to create a single build, use it in multiple places, and it doesn't necessarily dictate only one path to do it. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Matthias, and I kind of want you to show me how can someone like me who I build samples as the day is long, and I like to make sure that they have build automation. Like, how do I write maybe a build script once and then not have to write it for every single instance, right? I have 15 NuGet packages that I want to use the same exact build for. How can Nuke help me in that space?
So there are a couple of approaches probably. There's questions that should be answered is, do you intend to have a single build that is kind of static for all your projects because they build the same way? Or maybe do you still want some kind of flexibility where you say, okay, I have 10 projects, 2 of them, let's say, build, and I will make an example with an open source project. 2 of them would build their website with DocFX, and the rest, the next 8, they would use Docusaurus, for instance. Big fan of Docusaurus, by the way. So that's a question that should be answered. For the first version, where the build is still rather static, and of course you can still influence that with some parameters and all that. By the way, parameters we didn't even touch, but should I say that? So for instance, if you want to pass some information from the outside, this is the way. Yeah, you don't need to look for environment variables yourself or command line yourself. You can just set up a field, make it read only. That will also make sure that it's not, modified in that build process, and put the attribute there. and that's it. And then you can call nuke -- parameter value. But it also can resolve from environment variables and a number of other places. So just to mention that briefly.
Yep.
But back to build sharing. So one example is global builds. That is the static way, let's say. So you can have a tool that includes all the tools that your build automation also requires. Like, for instance, this is packed as a global tool. It comes with Git version, JetBrains command line tools, OpenCover report generator, etc. And that is self-contained. So if you install that .NET global tool, basically, that will have everything that's needed to execute the build. So that is about the more static builds, let's say. Yeah. And you can have your custom tool command name. So you could call it smart build, for instance, and then you just type smart build in your terminal, right, and it would do its thing. The other thing that Rodney, I think, was more thinking about is when you want to be flexible, pulling in a couple of components, I call them, and mix and match them with each other. So this is one example. I have a build, and this is like a dependency diagram. But something like this, you wouldn't be able to see with regular, base type dependencies. And I mean, like, class A inherits from class B. Yeah, right. Because this is essentially the diamond problem. Yeah. But something that was a big feature for Nuke. If you remember the introduction of, how's it called? Default members in interfaces.
Yes.
I think that's a very, very rare feature for people to use. For Nuke, it was perfect. Yep. Because that means that an interface can actually implement something. You can put logic into your components. And in code, it would look roughly like this. Let me pull out mine here, because the Nuke project also uses, some ideas here and there. And in of course, my build definition is quite large, quite big. But what I have here, I not only have build inherits from Nuke build, but I can express a lot of other things. I can say I have, and I use I has, I can has cheeseburgers, but I has Twitter credentials, I has changelog, I has Git repository, etc. Yeah, I publish. Yeah, and if you look, for instance, we can take pack maybe as an example. Pack also depends on iCompile, depends on I has artifacts, and you can still define your dependencies. In this case, it's a strong dependency. But even if iCompile wasn't part of it, what we could do instead was, instead of this call, we would make try depends on, and then what is it? iCompile. That would be the same. Yep. This doesn't assert that your build is also implementing iCompile. Right. So the dependency is only expressed if your build implements both interfaces. Only then. Yeah. And that makes it loosely coupled and very nice to, put together in whatever way you prefer it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cecil, this is actually how I started consuming Nuke, and this is actually the feature that when and we've talked about default interfaces and how much I love them, right? So what happened was, when default interfaces became a thing, David and I started doing something very similar to this, and then Matthias found out what we were doing, and he was like, "Oh, well, I can make that a first-class citizen in Nuke." So he went off and made it a first-class citizen to allow you to compose your build of small, individual, composable pieces, so that I can go and create, like, let's say I have a mobile project that needs to go to Android, and never will I ever build iOS. Yeah. I can go and because I have my own components that I have built based upon Matthias's work, I can make a build for that application that does just the specific pieces I need by taking these individual components that are just C# default interface implementations and execute them. And the power that brought to my build automation was immeasurable. Like now, if I need to pull in some, like let's say I have a Docker container for a specific mobile app specifically for testing something, right? I can pull all those pieces into my pipeline and construct a build based upon what my requirements are. This is actually what like sold me. I was like, wait, I can do this? Like this felt like C#. This felt like C# build automation to me, whereas the MS build bits never have, right? Like Cake got close, but it didn't get me where where I wanted to be with integration with the tooling. This is what endeared me to Nuke, was when I was able to construct a build and just inherit from my own NuGet package, take my own little composable bits and pop out a whole new build script in minutes.
This is crazy. This is crazy, Tom.
I do have to make a clarification though. First version of this about default interface members was contributed. So I had an idea. So again, like coincidence, like I mentioned initially, also with Cake, two minds having great. How's that saying?
Great minds think alike.
Yes.
Yeah. Rodney told me that as well before. But yeah, so someone else contributed that initially, and of course we had to expand a lot on it because it also introduces a couple of problems here and there, how to resolve parameters, for instance, and all that kind of stuff. Like what is a good example like this, for instance, because parameters cannot be easily defined anymore in that way because interfaces cannot define instance members.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's a little bit of footwork there, but it can still work. Yeah.
Yep.
It can still work.
Yep. Yeah.
And I was also amazed. I mean, that was one of the best pull requests that I had. One of the most involved and non-trivial pull requests that I had, and really glad that someone took the time and invested, and was also very polished, I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you to that community member.
Yeah.
This is fantastic, man. So listening to you throughout a lot of this, it sounds like one of the best things that we could do for you as an extension of your community is to really just try and, well, obviously one, use it, but then two, contribute to like the efforts that are going on to help maintain it, or at least try and encourage like the rest of the folks in the .NET community to kind of help out a little bit. And I'll be honest with you, and this is my general feeling about like Microsofty stuff is, I'm feeling a lot of the times it's not a case that folks don't want to contribute. I think it's they just don't know about it. And I think it's hard in the .NET ecosystem to know about stuff that is not under a certain umbrella. Right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why Rodney and Elon and I have spaces like this where, hopefully we can try and help out with that to some extent. But like I said, like I didn't know Nuke did a lot of those things that you showed off today. So I am very grateful, obviously, for you coming here, building the tool, obviously, but also coming here and talking to us about it. Because like I said, like, I would be living in ignorance, right? Because again, I just didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot more projects out there that have, I'm not necessarily talking about myself. That's not my style, but that have great ideas and that might have a hard time to get recognized. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also doesn't really play in the same field probably with JetBrains. I'm also trying that to some degree, like getting moderately popular open source projects already, but to tell the world about those projects. But generally, I remember the first times when I started with the project. There's also a lot of not invented here syndrome that you see. May it be on Twitter, may it be on Reddit, where people say, why? And I was always a fan of giving people opportunity to, evolve, to follow some path, and maybe something good comes out of it. But I think here and there we have more opportunities to support, free thinking minds, let's say, that try to push the limits of what currently already exists. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I see this every now and then on Reddit, at least. Yeah. And funny also, in the same moment, people are often, but I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's actually a good point or a good mind exercise to ask, okay, why should I use that? It's a bit of the what I don't like about it is the selling character, because open source is free work, free labor. So it has a weird touch about, sell me this, because the person is not getting any money. But from the point of view of creating an elevator pitch, it's nice. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, this has been very eye opening for sure. And I'm sold. Like the minute that you say you generate YAML, I'm sold. You don't. Anything you said after that was just like a +1. Like you said, you generated YAML, I was sold. Like from that point on.
How many pluses did I collect?
Tons.
Yeah. Your cup runneth over.
Tons of pluses. But my friend, I just want to say thank you so much again for coming on. I feel like I learned a lot. I'm sure Rodney learned a lot too.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully the folks that are watching and will watch the recording later,
I
learned
have
a lot as well.
Just to give an understanding, like these are the comments that are coming in, right? Like people are telling me that this is brilliant. Another person says it's amazing. Like, so yeah, people are seeing this and they're appreciating what the value that it will bring to them is. And I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure.
I also want to thank you. I mean, probably you see it because every time I'm giving a presentation about this and I manage to blow people's minds, like I also get a lot of energy from that, for sure. Yeah. And I'm super happy that when people have this oh my god moment, I'm sure you will also at some point have this feeling of oh my god, why does this not work? Yeah, that exists for sure. Yeah. I'm not saying anything different. But at least the direction, I think it's cool to see when people say, okay, yeah, this kind of makes sense, and it gives some validation, let's say. Yeah, and I'm very happy about that as well. It's nice to get some people off from the YAML train if they hate being on the YAML train. For instance, yeah, that's a cool feeling. Yeah,
no,
and help them eventually.
Yeah, no, we definitely appreciate it. I'm sure, again, like the features that you've shown us and have implemented are going to help so many other folks just boost their productivity, right? So, definitely thank you for that. And yeah, we got to get you to come back on again sometime soon, man. Maybe whenever you've figured out the payment model, if you decide to do so. You know what I mean? Like, we should have you come back on and talk about
that. Have you ever done like I think I planned that with Rodney at some point, but have you ever done? I'm not sure because I'm sure some episodes I missed, but like a panel discussion about open source in general, because I think that could be super interesting.
I would be down for that.
So I actually, it's actually now more relevant than it's been, because one of the popular open source projects that I use recently just announced that they are going to be going to a paid model for businesses that make over a certain amount of money to consume their software. So I think that this conversation is actually relevant, and I would love to have you on that panel to talk about it, because Matthias and I have talked about this ad nauseum about the .NET open source community, how it's very consumer focused. You'll go to places and they'll say, why? Like you'll actually go to companies and say, oh, we can use this free thing, and they would actually rather pay, but there's no model set up because we're open source developers. Matthias came up with this because he had an inkling where he wanted to do something different, and he wanted to provide that as a service. He didn't go into this trying to make, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So we as open source developers aren't really set up to live in that world, but that's the world our services get consumed in. So I definitely think that there's value in bringing you back to have that conversation with a couple other people that I can think of in the .NET open source community, because I think it's something that we need to figure out, because Microsoft is not going to figure it out for us, even though they say that they're trying to. They're not. They're concerned with their own concerns, and they aren't concerned with the individual small projects that could actually help boost their acceptance in the greater development community. They don't invest in those. So we as the community have to figure out a way to ensure that projects like Nuke stay around for the next 10 years, because I'm going to be using, as long as I'm a .NET developer, I'm going to be using Nuke. Until Matthias tells me, hey, Rodney, I'm not maintaining it anymore, I'm going to continue to use it. So how do I ensure that he is still motivated? He is not
burnt out,
that he's not coming too far outside of himself to continue to provide me that service, right? Like that's what we as the community need to answer, because no one is giving us an answer from the ivory tower at Microsoft. I said it.
I think you would, with such a panel, I think you would get I don't even think you would have a discussion where everyone agrees.
We wouldn't.
I know for instance, even the two of us, I think there are several points where we wouldn't agree. Yeah. And I think it would be super interesting.
I'm booking it now. I'm booking it now. I got ideas. If you have ideas for people that you would like to converse with on that,
absolutely,
let me know, and we'll organize it, because that's the kind of conversation that we need to be having. We aren't, because tools like this need to continue to exist. Microsoft is not going to invest in them. No one's going to do it other than you. So how do we ensure that you want to continue to do this work? Because you're solving problems that they're not solving, and that are real developer problems. You just showed me I can debug a build on GitHub Actions, and I'm like, I would pay money out of my pocket. Here's my credit card, take it. Like how much do you want? I can tell you the number of hours I've spent wasted trying to figure out why this YAML build just doesn't work. Anyway, so
you should do it. I have some ideas around that too, because I think, in addition to .NET developers, let me take a step back. Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to have a conversation and we don't leave with some level of solutions.
Right.
So I would love for us to, let's have some maintainers on, but I can think of some other folks that are not necessarily .NET folks, but are open source supporting folks that can have some solutions that I've seen work in other communities. But maybe, again, us as .NET folks, like, we don't know everything. You know what I mean? Like, it may be good to like talk about what the problems are, but then what are some of those available solutions, and then kind of like have that umbrella conversation. I think that would be kind of interesting if we could lead with some solutions, identify the problem, but like also let's have some options for how we could tackle this thing kind of going forward. I think that would be a good idea.
I agree. If the output of that conversation is just more questions, then the conversation wasn't relevant. We are at a point where we need, even if it's just a couple of solutions, and they don't have to work for everybody, right? Like, it could slightly vary. You could disagree on this point, but we need to find ways to make sure that developers like this aren't burning out. And they're continuing to provide amazing features like this. Yeah,
for sure.
Oh, Matthias, thank you so much for your time, my friend.
You know, I just had to look up because the one time I bought it, I don't need your credit card. You can invite me for a bottle of Maker's Mark. That was your favorite, right?
Look. I've been trying to get you stateside for the past 2 years, my friend. So like, we're gonna figure it out before the end of this year.
Yeah, we'll figure
out getting you here, and we're gonna sit back, crack open a bottle of whiskey, drink some beers, maybe some coffee as well, and we're gonna sit down and we're gonna figure out how to make it work for you.
Oh, gee. So I have to move again. Oh, no.
Yeah, you have to move. You just got to come hang out for a couple of days.
So that's your goal, to figure it out in a couple of days. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
You're motivated.
couple
That's
of
why
days,
I'm
couple of
happy,
bottles
right?
of whiskey. I mean, pick your poison, my friend. I'm just trying to help you help the community, because once you reduce the amount of YAML that I had to write, you made a friend for life and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Oh, man.
That's crazy.
It was great being here. I mean, I met you. I know Rodney for a little bit longer. Cecil, we also met briefly before. It was there's a reason why I tune in every now and then to your streams, so I like them. So
No, we appreciate it.
Keep up with that as well, please. So it's very appreciated. Also, in the name of the community, I think I can say that.
Thank you.
I'm part of the community.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Awesome. Well, Mateus, thank you again for being here, and for all of you that are still hanging out watching, thank you so much for supporting us and being here with us so far. Make sure you go to nuke.build. Like, that is the website for the open source project that we've been talking about. Make sure you go check them out at GitHub. And then I think, Mateus, you're on the Twitters or still, right? Have you left and gone to like Mastodon or one of those other things?
I'm still on Twitter, but I also have Mastodon. Yeah.
There you go. So check out Mateus on all the places social, and let him know what's going on, and if you're interested in helping, I'm sure he'll be very much open to that. But with that being said, that has been another episode of Inside.net. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you again next time. All right? Bye, everybody.
See you, everybody.
Oh, I need you to push the button, Ronnie, because I'm not logged in.
Yeah, I got it.